Priscilla Thompson, a reporter for NBC News Now. I just got off the campaign trail covering the presidential candidates during the Democratic primary, and now I am covering COVID and lots of other stories for NBC News. But today I am taking you behind the story for NBCU Academy, and I am here with Ugonna. Hello, Ugonna. How are you today?
Hi, I'm good.
Awesome. Well, first, let me say congratulations on the debut of your film. As someone who has worked on docs in the past and knows how hard it can be to condense lots of great material into a short doc, it was super amazing to watch. And so congratulations on that.
Thank you. It's definitely a very different game than doing broadcasts, so it was a cool experience.
So we're going to get into the film a little later, but I wanted to start off our conversation by just learning a little bit about you and sort of your journey that has led you to this point where you are now in your career.
So I started at NBC in 2012 in the NBC News Associates program. It's a fellowship program for people who are interested in producing and gives you a rotational experience throughout the year in the NBC News division. I knew that I wanted to produce, but I wasn't quite sure what kind of producing I wanted to do. And I really didn't know that much about the industry yet. So it was an awesome introduction into not only what network producing is like, but into NBC, the company. And I've been here now coming up on almost 9 years. Since that, I went to the Today Show where I produced for the last 7 years. And now I'm on the custom productions unit where I do event producing.
And for those who don't know, what does an events producer do? And tell us a little bit about the unit that you now work on.
Well, event producing obviously looks a lot different now that we are living in this virtual world. But the idea behind it is we wanted to really figure out a way to connect with NBC's audience in a way that is more dynamic and more interactive than just them watching our content on screen. So through event producing, I look for opportunities to either collaborate with brands like South by Southwest, the Aspen Security Forum, the Texas Tribune Festival, and bring our talent to those stages and introduce them to new audiences. But I also look for ways to kind of build upon the great work that we're already doing at NBC. So one thing that I've really enjoyed doing is working with Jenna Bush Hager and the Read with Jenna book club and helping her find a new way to connect with her readers.
And as you sort of mentioned, you started your career as a news associate. You did what most of us do, began working your way up in the company. You went on to the Today Show, and then you decided to make this pivot to being an events producer with this new team. Talk to me a little bit about why you decided to make that move.
Honestly, I think I've always, since college and even just throughout my career, I've always looked for ways to try new experiences. So even while I was at the Today Show, I went from working overnight shifts, early mornings, 4 a.m. shifts, and doing breaking news to doing a lot of features and a lot of big hour-long specials. And so it just made sense for me to try something else. And NBC provided this opportunity to go into events producing. It uses a lot of the same skills of being organized, finding resources, bringing different teams together. But in this case, it gave me a different chance to connect with the people that we've been producing for the last 10 years. So I don't know, it just made sense. And I grew up at the Today Show. I learned so much there. And I think it just made sense for me to move into something that allowed me to stretch my wings a little more.
And I know one thing that I found in my career is that your priorities can change. What is important to you at the beginning of your career, 10 years from now, may not be the ultimate goal, or even 2 years from now. And so I'm curious, when you decided to make that pivot, was there any sort of internal chasm about if it was the right move? And how did you think through and process that?
That's actually a really good question and a good point that you make, because I think a lot of us don't realize that our priorities are going to evolve throughout our career. I think a lot of times you look at it as the typical step ladder of I start in this place and, like you said earlier, work my way up. But it did get to a point where I realized, like, as much as I enjoyed the work I was doing at Today, that I wanted to really make sure that I was connecting to the audience in a different way. And so one thing that actually opened my mind, I ran for about 2 years. I worked with some lovely ladies on an organization called Brown Girls Speak, where we put on a lot of events for people throughout the New York City area. I never done it before. I don't really know what inspired the idea other than the fact that a lot of our community were creatives and women of color. And we wanted to just create experiences for them. And it turned out that it was something I enjoyed a lot. And I really enjoyed being able to watch people really just experience something that I had created. And so that priority started to shift for me, because a lot of times with TV producing, as fulfilling as it can be, it kind of airs and then, you move on to the next project. And so I just started thinking like, I think I really want to move my career in a direction where the work I'm doing, I can see it being experienced and I can really see the impact that it has on people.
Yeah. It's really cool how that experience sort of shifted your perspective, because as we're going through life, we have all sorts of new experiences and we should constantly be doing that and sort of rethinking some of those things. And now, in addition to all that you've done, we add filmmaker to your resume. So talk to me a little bit about how you got involved with Queen Latifah's Queen Collective. How did you hear about it? And why did you want to be a part of that?
Yeah, so actually, I'll be completely honest, I had never heard about the Queen Collective before. It's a fellowship that Queen Latifah started with Tribeca Studios and Procter Gamble, just to give an opportunity to women filmmakers of color and give them a chance to break into an industry that sometimes can be really difficult to find your way into. So I had a friend approach me. She said that she had heard about this fellowship, that she was going to apply to it. And she asked me if I was interested in doing it with her. We've been friends for a long time, and we actually met in the NBC News Associates program when we first started in 2012. So it made sense that if I was going to do this experience that was really intimidating, that I would do it with her. So we applied. We got the amazing opportunity to be selected as one of the 2 films that would be produced. And then we hit the ground running.
Of course, we do want to talk about the documentary. For those who haven't seen it, talk to me a little bit about what it is about and also how you came across this idea, wanting to do the documentary on this subject at this moment in our history, our country.
It's interesting how the timing worked out, because it wasn't something, let's be honest, when it comes to the Black community and their relationship with law enforcement, this is a story that has been going on for decades and for a long time. But I never thought that our film would be as relevant as it ended up being when it came out in June of 2020. So Gloves Off follows an amazing woman, Tiara Brown, who is a police officer in the DC metro area, but also a champion boxer. And we just knew when we came across her story, we were thumbing through different articles, and we knew that we were looking for someone who embodied the idea of being a strong woman of color, a powerful woman of color, especially just because we've been given this opportunity, not only as ourselves being women of color, to produce a film, but to hire a primarily female crew and have everyone that we employed and who was part of it kind of come from similar backgrounds. So we knew we wanted our story to center around somebody whose life resonated with that. And when we found out about Tiara, we were like, first of all, how do you do both? And it kind of resonated with me, because at that time I also was juggling 2 very different things. But also we wanted to really explore and do sort of a character study of what does it take to be able to put yourself in both situations, because the truth is it was very difficult for her as a Black woman to be a police officer in DC. She had experiences both within and outside of her police team that was difficult. And then also as a professional boxer, she was on Team USA and she traveled around the world and did a lot of amazing things, but also faced a lot of discrimination as well. So we really wanted to get to the core of who she is, why these are things she's interested in, how she's been able to persevere over the challenges, and sort of what was in store for her life.
And if I understand correctly, your documentary got greenlit at the same time that you were making this transition into this new role, this new team. I'm curious, what was it like for you juggling these 2 major life moments at the same time?
I think ideally people would want to go through one major life moment at a time, but it just so happened that Around the same time that I found out that I was getting this new job, about a day later, I also found out that our film had been selected for the Queen Latifah, the Queen Collective Fellowship. So it was a lot of good news in 1 week. And then it was like, okay, now I have to get to work. And yeah, it was, I'm not going to lie, it was challenging. But I think there was something exciting about it, especially because these changes happened towards the end of 2019. So to start the new year, kind of hitting the ground running in a new role, trying to wrap my mind around a side of the media business that I've never been exposed to, meeting new staff around the company, and then at the same time, learning a completely new side of filmmaking, which I'd never tried before. So it's kind of like, it was a lot of learning at once, but I think something about it was exciting just as much as it was challenging.
And was there ever a moment where you felt like, oh my gosh, maybe I took on too much here? And if so, how did you navigate either balancing the two or having to have tough conversations in either role to let people know, you may need some more time to dedicate to other projects?
I can tell you there were multiple moments where I was like, I think I took on a little too much. But I think really just having a support system was really important. I mean, just like I mentioned, I wasn't doing this film by myself. So being able to co-direct it and co-produce it with someone was a huge advantage, just because we were able to lean on each other in times when, I either couldn't give my full attention to it for whatever reason. She was able to pick up the slack and vice versa. And even just having a supportive boss and team at NBC as well, too, because there were a lot of times where I would finish the work week Friday around like 4 p.m. And then I would run to LaGuardia, get on a flight, go to DC for a shoot, and then Sunday night start flying back, and then Monday morning be back at the office again. It was a lot, but I think having people who understood, and not only understood, but supported it and encouraged the work helped me go in times that I just felt like I'm in over my head.
So we are talking to sort of emerging journalists here. And I think often when you get that first job in the business and you get into the grind of working your way up, sometimes supplemental opportunities and outside programs kind of fall by the wayside. I'm curious, how important do you think opportunities like the one that you had with the Queen Collective in conjunction with your job, like how important do you think that is for young journalists who are sort of trying to figure out where their passions lie in this vast field?
Oh, it's 100% important. If anything, I think it's necessary because there are so many programs, fellowships, grants out there that are willing to invest in young talent. And I think I definitely could have had the experience of learning how to create a film, and creating a short film and short documentary on my own, but to be able to come into an environment where I was mentored, I was given the financial resources and the support to be able to make it happen, made it a vastly different experience. So I think anytime that you can take advantage of those opportunities, you should. The NBC News Associates program was also another similar idea. Like I could have applied for jobs and hoped to work my way up to the chance of trying my hand at network producing. But I saw this fellowship and this program that was willing to invest in people who were interested in it. And I took advantage of that. And it's helped my career blossom into what it is today.
And I feel like in our day-to-day roles, it can be very easy to allow them to define who we are as journalists. And so I have another overarching question for you. How would you describe or define yourself as a journalist in this work?
You're coming with all the hard questions today.
Gotta make you think.
No, it's a really good one. And I think it's the answer to that question changes. Going back to our conversation earlier, as your priorities change in your career, I think the answer to who I want to be perceived as, but also what I want to contribute also changes. I think that my main commitment from the very beginning has always been to tell stories that maybe don't normally get told, which I think is something that many people say and is a reason a lot of us get into this business, but making sure that they're being told in a way that's authentic, and that we're asking questions that normally we wouldn't ask. So taking ourselves past the surface level and making sure that we're doing a deeper dive. And I just think it's really important to pay attention to who people are. I think at the core of who we are as a society, it's the people and the community around us that drive us a lot. And I think that as we have media and news that really pays attention to that and addresses that, it only serves to improve life for everybody.
I always love to close things out by asking, especially with young journalists watching, what is the best piece of advice that you've ever gotten? Career advice or otherwise that you just found so helpful and applied to life?
I think the best piece of advice that I can think of, at least off the top of my head, is really treating yourself, as your own business. Yes, you work for a lot of, you'll work for a lot of different companies throughout your career, and you'll be able to take advantage of opportunities with fellowships and other programs, but ultimately you're the CEO of yourself. And so you really have to think about what it is that you want to do and what you think the best path for getting there is. I think a lot of times it's easy to feel like we're supposed to follow a very traditional, already set blueprint for how you achieve success. And I just don't think that's true anymore. And so I think finding out ways, making sure that you have sort of, a board of people on your business. These are people who are advisors, mentors, sponsors who you can go to for advice, but also just really knowing and understanding for yourself what you want to achieve in your career and making those decisions accordingly is the best way to make sure that things work out in a great way.
Very well said. And I think that's a great note to end it on. So, Ugonna, thank you so very much for sitting down for this wide-ranging conversation about your life and your career.
Yeah, thank you for having me. It was a good conversation.
Yeah, it was pretty great. And thank you all for watching. I'm Priscilla Thompson here for NBCU Academy, and we will see you for our next Behind the Story.